All right, I'm going to start off with a really easy question. Let's go back in time. What is your birth name?
Lyra Louise Smith.
Tell me a little bit about your early life, where you were born, where you were raised, where you went to school, that kind of stuff.
I was raised in rural Mississippi. My dad passed away when I was a baby, and my mother had three brothers that lived real close to my grandmother. And they immediately got my mom and myself, and we come to grandma's house. I was raised, I hate to tell you, I was raised a spoiled brat.
I
I
can't
was.
imagine that.
Because we lived like right here in grandma's house. My mother had a brother and a wife that lived right here. Out in front of us was a mother's brother and his wife. No children, no children. She had another brother over here and his wife, no children.
Wow, just you.
So I mean, if I didn't get what I wanted here, I'd went to that one.
Where did you go to school?
I went to school in rural Mississippi, and then my mom remarried when I was 10 years old. I would not live with her because I called her my sister, and I called my grandmother my mother. But I would go down and visit with her, but now I was told by three different guys that if I wasn't happy, call them, they'd come get me. Well, if I didn't like something happen, I'd call them, they'd come get me. And I just went. And by then, I was 16 years old, and I had a little brother, a little half brother. And I immediately will live with my mom on account of that little brother.
Well, you were married to Gene Smith. Can you tell me a little bit about how you first met and got introduced to Gene Smith?
When what, hon?
How did you first meet Gene?
I met Jean when I was working in a credit store on South Main in Memphis.
Was it love at first sight, or did it take a
No,
while?
no. I dated him quite a few months, and then it just kept going and going and going.
He wouldn't leave you alone.
No.
You just got interviewed a minute ago, so some of these questions are going to be similar to what you've already been asked. But could you tell me a little bit about when you first met Elvis and about what you were telling the other guy a minute ago?
When I first met Elvis, I was working in a credit store down on South Main in Memphis. And he came in to open up a charge account to buy some clothes. And I go up to interview him to get an application filled out. He was not cooperative at all. I asked him his name. He said, "You tell me your name, and then I'll tell you mine." I said, "Let's try this again." I said, "Give me your address." "No, not till you give me your address." Well, I stood there a minute and I looked at him and I said, "This may not work." I said, "If you don't fill this out as I asked you," I said, "you know that door you come in when you come in this store? You can go right back out of it." So he finally looked and he said, "No." Okay, so we filled it out. I called Credit Bureau and he was approved. And that's how it all started, because they come in the store every week to pay on their account.
Now, how was Gene related to Elvis?
They were first cousins. Elvis's mom and Jean's mom were sisters.
All right, now I hear this a lot about how Elvis was really generous. He would buy Cadillacs and that kind of stuff for people. Could you share a story about something you
I
witnessed?
sure can. There was one Christmas that Elvis took all those boys down on on Union Avenue to Schilling Motors. They sold Cadillacs and Lincolns. He bought every one of those guys a brand new car that night. Well, after they all get so excited, Elvis had a special car that he had ordered. And so while they was all standing in the showrooms, right outside the door there was a little black lady there. And she was waiting for her son to come pick her up, because after the offices closed around there, she went in at night and cleaned all of the office because their car wouldn't start. So finally, she said, maybe he'll be here in a little while. So sure enough, he showed up. The car was clunk, 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 clunk. So Elvis looked at her and he said, "You mean at your age, you working down here cleaning office?" She said, "Yes, sir, that's the way we pay our rent and buy our groceries." He gave that lady his car that night.
Wow. That is amazing.
And left the clunker sitting there. And he looks around and all of the guys are so excited they got cars. They split. They get a car, they gone this way, that way. Elvis was standing. Now the manager of that car place had already locked the door, and him and Elvis was standing outside talking. So he said, "Well, I'm gonna go ahead and leave." He left. Elvis is sitting on Union Avenue in the middle of the night. No traffic, no cars, nowhere. He's standing in the middle of the street by himself. So he happened to walk back kind of at the side of the building, and he saw a light on under the door. So he walks back there. He could see a black man in there working. Yeah. So he knocked on the door, told him, said, "I'm Elvis Presley. Can I get in?" He said, "No, sir, can't let you in." He didn't know who it was. So finally Elvis convinced him and let him in. He said, "I bought all the guys a car, and they've all gone. I do not have a way home." People wonder why he didn't have a phone. Back then, you didn't have the phone you carry in your pocket today. So old Willie told him, said, "Well, if you'll wait, I got a few more little things, and I'll take you home." He said, "But my car hadn't got no back seat in it, and my passenger seat has got a spring in it." But Elvis said, "I'll sit anyway to get home." So old Willie took Elvis home, let him out, and he told him, he said, "Willie, I need your address and your phone number. I got a friend who I use his phone." He said, "Well, let me have the number." The next day, Willie was invited to Graceland with a brand new car.
Wow. I bet he was pretty mad at those guys that left him.
And boy, he laid in on all them boys. He said, "Wait till I give you something else. You got what last you'll ever get."
That was an awesome story. People are like, I interviewed Billy Stanley and a lot of the other people, and they always talk about how Elvis was a prankster. He liked to pull jokes on people. Did you ever witness any of that?
Yes.
Tell me about a prank you saw him pull, something he did to get you
Tell you what.
Tell me about a joke Elvis pulled on somebody.
Who's gonna know this?
Everybody.
Okay. Have you ever been down on like Beale Street? You probably hadn't. Years ago, there was pawn shops all down Beale Street. And now, do you know what a pawn shop is? Okay. Well, all these pawn shops had 3 brass balls that hung outside. So Elvis broke from us and went running down there and hollered back at me to run and kiss him beneath the balls. I could have killed him. He's talking about the brass balls up here. All these people look around and I thought, oh my God. Honey, I have lived one heck of a life.
Now, you if I'm correct, you lived in Graceland for a while.
Yes, sir.
When did you start living in Graceland, and where? Can you tell me a little bit about where you were in the house?
Okay, looking up to the mansion, upstairs, there's two windows over on this side, and two windows over on this side. The two windows over on the right-hand side looking at us happen to be Elvis's bedroom. You come down the hall where these two windows were, that was our bedroom.
Okay, and you lived in there in the 50s or 60s? Okay. Now, when we were at your house earlier, you showed me a trophy. Can you tell me a little bit about that trophy?
Oh, about the popcorn trophy. Okay. We had moved out of Graceland then and had our own house. And Elvis was coming by to pick us up because we was going to Lansky Brothers. And so when he did, he pulled up in the driveway, jumped out, left his door open, come running in, and went to the back of our house, to the bedroom. And I said, "What are you doing?" He said, "There's people following me." He said, "Get rid of them. See what they want and get rid of them." So I go back. They get out. They're standing at my door, ringing the doorbell. So I go to the door. And they said that they had been to the gates and tried to get to Elvis. They wanted to present him with a trophy. They said, "That's all. Just present him with this trophy, and we're going to be gone." So I go back there and tell him. He said, "Okay." So we go back down, we go down the hall to the living room, and I brought him in, and they showed him a trophy. It is called the popcorn trophy. And it being called that was due to the fact that his movies sold more popcorn than they had ever sold. And anyway, we left out to go to Lance's, and I said, "Elvis, get your trophy there." He said, "I'll get it later. Leave it there." Later, still hadn't come. Guess what? I got the trophy in my bedroom.
Now, did you ever know Gladys?
Oh, Lord, yes. I mean,
Well, I didn't know. I wasn't sure exactly when you had gotten married with Jean, if she was still alive or not. So,
I met her now. I met her way, way before Elvis ever become famous.
Oh, you did? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, what was she like? What can you tell me about her?
Well, she was real possessive of Elvis. And I guess it was due to the fact of her losing one of his twin, you know. But she was so particular over him, it was just unreal, you know.
You think?
And he was the same way by her, though.
Oh yeah.
That was his little satin. That's what he called it, little satin.
Did you think she liked the success that he was having in the music business? It may have been a little much for her, having been so poor and then all of a sudden being really rich.
Do what now?
What was it like for her whenever Elvis all of a sudden goes from being poor to being
She
superstar?
could not get over how fast he was going, how fast this was happening, you know.
We're almost done. We've only got 3 more left.
Well, okay.
Let's fast forward until 1977. Can you tell me about the last time that you saw Elvis Presley?
Yes, I can. We got in the car and went to Graceland. And he was out in the car somewhere, and he come in. We was sitting in the jungle room. And he come in, and it was awful.
Really? When was this? This was in 77?
About 2 weeks before he passed away.
Oh, wow. Well, where were you?
But I mean, he knew us. He immediately hugged us, you know, and the kids.
Well, where were you and what were you doing when you heard that he had passed?
I was at work, and I had a friend that worked at Baptist Hospital down on Union Avenue. And she called me and told me they had just brought him in. And so then she called me back and she told me. Said they hadn't announced it, but they're getting ready to call the press in to announce it. Well, Gene was a truck driver back then, and he was on his way in, and he did not know nothing about it. So I left work and I called Gene's boss and I told him what had happened. And I said, Don, when he gets there, but then he told me not to worry about it. He'd check him in and get him on his way home. And well, as soon as Gene got home, we went straight to Graceland. Being on Bill Street with at that pawn shop, he had finished making a movie, and the way it ended, the people out there didn't like the way it ended. He had to fly back out there, and they was gonna redo the ending. So he told Gene, he said, "Why don't you and Louise and his girlfriend said that y'all three come out and fly out there next week and spend a week out there?" Said, "I'd like to show Louise where we live, this, that, and I want to take her to Vegas." And he said, "But when you get there, I want us to eat and head out for Vegas for her to see all the lights and everything, you know." So we went out there for a week. I got home 1 month later. I was out there 5 weeks.
Wow. I bet that was awesome.
We went to a show every night. They had one at 12, at 8, and the next one at 12. In these big.
That must be where you got started on your late nights.
No, that started here too.
No, did it?
Because anywhere we went, Elvis couldn't go like we can. Because he'd be just flooded, you know. We went to the movies about 12:30. He rented a skating rink for ages after midnight. He then had to start renting the fairground. But everything was after midnight because he couldn't. We go Christmas shopping. There was a mall there close to Graceland. And they closed a couple of stores so we could shop in there after they closed.
It's cool to be that big, but at the same time,
it's pitiful.
It
is.
He
said he didn't have no life.
Oh, you're famous.
He sat
but
there
you
in that
just
kitchen
stay at home.
many a time and told us he was the most miserable SB that ever lived. He said, "Y'all can walk out that door, get in any car I got out there, go out that gate, you can go left, you can go right, nobody's after you." But now in Vegas, Elvis was like you and me walking the.
There's probably a lot of guys dressed up as Elvis, so they'd just be like,
No,
"Ah."
the thing about it is, see, he never did see any of that.
He didn't.
You got all these stars walking around in Vegas in them big hotels like we was in, you know.
Well, Miss Louise, I really appreciate you taking the time. I know it's taken us a long time, but we got it now.
You got that right.
Thank you very much.
Okay, let me ask you this.
Okay.
It paid off. Did it pay off for the wait?
It did. That was a really good interview. I really appreciate it. It was awesome.
Well, I appreciate you coming in my house and see where I live now.
Well, thank you. And I will let you know once I get it done, and I'll put it on Facebook for you to see.
Great.